GameStop employees of Reddit, what are some of your horror stories? I had a guy call me a terrorist. I'm Middle Eastern. We had a buy 2 get 1 free sale on pre-owned games. He wanted to buy the 2 cheaper games and get the expensive one free. When informed that's not how it works, he flipped out. We had to call security in the mall we were in to get him to leave. He called corporate and corporate told us he was documented, so any negative reviews on the next few weeks would be flagged. My manager stood up for me that day. I miss that guy. We also had a fire breakout in the back room. Got rid of a lot of old inventory. Happened on Halloween. We were closed for a few days to clean and stuff. I used a fire extinguisher that day. First time ever. This was 2007 or so. GameStop had a used game return policy. 7 days no questions asked, full refund. People would abuse this constantly, like a rental service. We knew it, and we were able to flag people who did it too often, and decline them the returns. Manager policy, not company policy. Then there was this one bitch. Old lady, gaggle of grandkids. Seemed so sweet, was very nice to us, while in the store, asking for help, recommendations, etc. Bought them a PS2 and a freaking gigantic stack of games, like had to be 20 to 25 at least. Her total came out over $400. I rang her out, handed her the multiple bags of stuff, and said to the kids something along the lines of, wow, you guys are lucky to have such a great grandma. This many games will last you months. The grandma chuckled and said, oh, they are only in town for the week. You guys have that 7-day return policy. I'll see you in 6 days. The guy who comes in with obviously stolen stuff, but can't be called out on it, so he just keeps it up. Former GS employee here. Worked in a store on the edge of a super sketchy part of Akron, Ohio. Back in the PS2 era, a guy brought in a box of trades. There were 3 games. Leisure Suit Larry Playboy, The Mansion the Guy game. The rest of the box was nothing but porn on VHS. He was politely asked to leave. He asked us why. My co-worker's response had me keeping over. Because there's jizz all over your stuff. He left. I got scolded by management for helping a woman for 30 minutes. She bought 12 games and was looking for good recommendations for her son who was on the spectrum. I found every game on her list and a few more to surprise him. Those surprise games were Okami and Katamari Damacy. She was overjoyed that her son was going to have lots of good games to play. Why were they mad over such a large sale? Oh, because they weren't fucking used. Fudge that store. That woman wanted to make sure her son was happy, and I was tasked to do so. I know I did a good job, and you guys can close shop. Edit. I probably won't be able to reply to everyone. Thanks for all the positive comments. Never was an employee, but on the night Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, I was waiting in line and this kid rode up in the parking lot and starting bragging about how he got the first copy and held his copy out the window. After about 10 to 15 seconds of bragging and holding it outside the window, another kid ran up from behind the car, yanked the copy from his hand, and ran into the woods behind the GameStop. They never found the kid who took it, and the kid in the car starting crying immediately. I worked at GameStop as a RASM and SM for 4-ish years. I have so many stories of creepy, scary, and rude customers. Some highlights. I once got asked out on a date at the register. I'm young, and naive, and awkward, and I kind of stop in my tracks and tell him that I'm working, and I can't answer that. I work another 4 hours or so, and close by myself, and he was waiting in the parking lot for me to leave. I had a family that would bring their son in every Saturday. They explained to me that he had severe autism and he was nonverbal. No problem, except they would stand in a corner and text or whatever while he'd knock over stands, rip things from walls, and even run behind the counter and try to bite you. I had to get permission to ban them from the store, but I was tired of trying to not get bit. I worked at an EB Games in 2005. The important thing to notice that EB didn't use the term used for games, but instead used pre-played. I had a woman come in to buy Sniper Elite for her husband, but I didn't have any more sealed copies, just the gutted display boxes. She doesn't mind this and purchased it at the new game price. A few hours later, I get an angry phone call from a man who says I sold his wife a used game and charged her for a new copy. He explains who she was, and I tell him what happened. He freaks out and says that the game was opened, which makes it used. I'll let him know that we don't sell used games, we sell pre-played games, and assure him that the disc was removed from the case, sleeved, and filed, which means it has never been played, and is therefore a new copy. He gets loud, asks me how old I was, 18, and goes off about how he is older than me, and is a lawyer. He demands that he be refunded the difference between the prices, so I tell him that my store manager would be in the next morning and he could take it up with her. To my knowledge, he never called her, so I think he just gave up. Years ago, 2007, 2008-ish, I trained a kid that turned around and robbed the store at gunpoint a month after we fired him for stealing. He and his buddies left without shooting anyone. My coworker was on the phone with the cops after he left, while I was getting his old employee file out, reading off his 2 addresses he had down, parents and grandparents, phone number, etc. He's still serving time as the gun they used was apparently used in another homicide. I was in ASM for about a year, had done retail before. Our store was right in between a fairly upscale touristy part of town as well as some of the poorer neighborhoods, so we got all sorts of people. I'll tell one horror story and then one uplifting story. The holiday season was in full swing and we were always crowded. This particular day we had a few seasonal hires in to help with the workload, and I was behind the counter pulling games as people came up to make the transactions faster. Then suddenly a smell hit the entire building like 100 cats had peed in the air conditioner and someone had tried to get it dry by stoking a fire with burning hair. My seasonals looked at me with a mix of confusion and terror as a family of 4 approached the counter and it slowly became apparent that they were the cause of the smell. I've been nossa blind before from staying with an aunt who used to be an animal hoarder, but this was far worse. I sent my seasonals on break, grabbed the hand sanitizer, pumped a small mountain of it into my hands and as casually as possible smeared it on my upper lip, hoping my facial hair would hold onto it and block the smell. It mostly worked. I was already in holiday rush mode, but this was the fastest I ever got a used Xbox 360 and GTA V packaged and ready to go. When they left, we noticed that the store had actually cleared out of all other customers who also couldn't deal with the odor. My SM came out of the back, gave me props for not embarrassing them, and promptly proceeded to fill our store with Febreze. Okay, one uplifting story. I know it's not what you asked for, but you're not the one making this post, Sonia. We had our regular customers, and over time we would get to recognize a few people and have a general sense of what their interests were. Beyond just being salespeople and trying to pitch whatever was hot and new. Frequently we would also get people who knew they had 7 days or however long to trade a game back in for the full amount they paid for, and would use us as a general rental service that way. We were supposed to flag their account somehow to stop this from happening, but it wasn't common enough at a location to really care. We weren't losing money, and it was better than them stealing from us. One sort of grungy guy missing a couple of teeth would come in regularly, and he had a few different criteria. He owned a regular DS, he didn't have much money, and he wanted the games to be very long, so they could occupy his time. Usually RPGs, but they had to have a good story. He'd bring it back if it wasn't engaging, and ask for something else. The first couple of times he did this, I thought maybe he was trying to put one over on us, but the games he was picking actually were too long to reasonably finish in the time he would have them. I guess I cold checked the save files, but it wasn't that big of a deal. He disappears for a couple of weeks, and then one day I'm working, and I get a call. It's him. It's not too busy, so we chat for a few minutes. He basically wants to pick my brain about what we've got that's less than $10, that will last for a month, and if it's worth his time to come get it, because his money is so tight that just driving to our store and not finding something will be sort of a significant loss. This happens to be during a week where Dragon Quest IX is on sale for less than $10, and we have one copy left, so I set it aside and tell him to try it out. My wife isn't a big JRPG fan, but she tried it, and it held her interest for quite a while, so maybe this guy will like it too. He comes by, gets it, thanks me and leaves. I don't see him for months. He's one of those regulars who you get to thinking about whether or not you would really say you were acquainted, but just that general I hope they're okay sort of thing. Then one day he comes back and wearing a full suit, grinning ear to ear. I recognize him right away and ask how things are going. He tells me they turned around and he got a job as a cook at a Sonic within walking distance from his house and had been able to save his money for a while thanks to Dragon Quest being so long, and he wanted to say thanks and to buy his mom a PS3. He knew the only games she really recognized were classics, so we picked out one of the new Pac-Man games and Namco Museum. He was looking at the price tags of a couple of other ones, and I could tell he was doing some quick mental math. So I told him pick the ones you're looking at and we'll see what we can make work. He gets one more game for his mom and brings them up to the front. It's been a few years since, so I honestly don't remember what, if any, promotions we had going on at the time, but wouldn't you know it? He got enough of a discount for some mysterious reason that he was able to afford everything. Subscribe to Random Redditor. Alti series will poke you.